So when you open up this booklet, you see this graph, and we're actually going to change it slightly to show the rise as well as the fall, because if you went back to 1932, on this first graph you would see 8% private sector collective bargaining coverage. Not union membership, that's a different issue. The key issue is bargaining coverage. Do people have any rights? Whether they join a union or not, that's up to them. But do they have any rights? Do they have a contract? Can they negotiate? Can they sit down with their employer? So from 1932 to 1954, it goes from 8 to 33%, and now it collapses. And so, in fact, this chart has public sector in it too, so it shows you 11.9. But if we take the public sector out, which is dropping now as well because of the attacks, it's actually 6.9%. So we can't pretend, knowing these facts, that we're going to keep doing what we're doing. You know, that is the definition of insanity. More importantly, it doesn't work. So on the next page, two more graphs that are worth talking about. So the one at the top, and again, if we took the first page and overlaid it on here, and again, not a surprise to anybody in this room, coming out of the Great Depression through World War II into the 1950s with this dynamic labor movement, that has organized 1 million people a year, every single year, net gain from 1935 to about 1948. 1 million workers each year got bargaining rights for the first time, right? At the same time, what you see in red going up is real average weekly earnings. This is what you call a dynamic economy. This is an economy where people can produce more, earn more, buy more, whatever, right? Dynamic economy. Then you see it grinds to a halt, peaks at about $731, and then declines, basically stays stable for 40 years. So basically, American workers haven't had a raise in 40 years. 40 years. This is unprecedented, and you can't find that anywhere else in the world, global north or global south. It's directly related, though. So lots of well-meaning folks will talk about raise the minimum wage and do other things. Directly related. No bargaining coverage, no voice, no seat at the table, no negotiations. Guess what? Wages fall. Bosses don't raise wages. Never have, never will, anywhere in the world. A little brighter news, bottom of the page, union coverage makes a difference. We look at other countries. So again, if you think back about the kind of work, wonderful work, that ILRF does, what's changed in the last 40 years? What's changed is in places like Brazil, in places like South Africa that are on this chart, there are others that aren't on this little chart, bargaining coverage went from next to nothing. As Judy said, people like us would be shot, like they still are in Colombia, even though we approved a trade pact, a total disgrace of this government last week that I will never, ever, ever forget. Saying that the Labor Action Plan made a difference. It did not make a difference when people can still drive by on a motorcycle and blow your brains out because you're an activist in a union. And we should never forget that in this room either. But the good news here is that in Brazil, in South Africa, from nothing, next to nothing, single digits like where we are now you have 40-45% of workers in those countries with bargaining rights. But it wasn't just bargaining rights, it was a political movement. It was movement building in those countries that linked together. Some of the stories we'll hear here today as well from other nations. Linked together the fight for bargaining rights, for economic justice, with the democracy movement. Doing movement building, and in some cases, new party building in order to create the difference that you see here. And then in red on the right, you see the United States. So why is this important? Because it shouldn't be this way. We're actually the major drag on the world economy in terms of bargaining rights, in terms of the standard of living, in terms of the chart above about flat and declining wages in this country for 40 years on our watch. That's what I think about. President of this union for 6 years, it continues to decline. What are we doing about it? So we got to sound the alarm here on May Day, reclaim May Day, reclaim the notion of movement building, and figure out, again, how we're going to link up this notion of democracy from Arab Spring, from Middle East, North Africa, from Madison, Wisconsin, from the fights in Ohio, whether they're public sector or private sector, the 45,000 Verizon strikers from August who went out on strike for 16 days just to say to our country and to that company, there are no bargaining rights in this country. Bargaining is a farce. Why would we at Verizon bargain backwards when the CEO just had his pay raise from $8 million to $20 million? Why? Because of this chart. Because it doesn't work anymore. Even when the company has plenty of money, they look at their peers and they say, no, you're going back. No, you're going back. No, you're going back. And we have to figure out how we take up these fights together. So, page 7, we see what, in the meantime, has happened to CEO pay. Again, you all know this. The idea is we're trying to do education work around this. 1980, bad enough. CEOs made 42 times the average worker's pay. This is Fortune 500 companies, and went up again. Now, the latest number is 380 times the CEO's pay. And, you know, it's just a number, but you really have to sort of stop and think about, you know, what that means. There's about 80 people in the room here. So in 1980, 80 here would work for one CEO, pay-wise, be an exchange. Now you need 4 times the number in this room. This is on our watch at our time. And so what do we do about it?